Hello and welcome. It's me, Mr. Ree, and my good friend Onceinluv, and we're here today for another, guide focused around deck building and water this time. So we just released a fire deck tier list, and it seemed to have some, pretty good enjoyment from the community. I've been having someone myself as a novice. A Padawan to the Master of Once is a real discrepancy that kind of people are enjoying. So they summoned us back, and here we are. Once, how you been, my friend?
It's been busy. Been busy with a lot of regionals. Busy preparing for Singapore. It's been a time. But you guys wanted us back, so we're here. So hope you guys enjoy this one. We're going to be working on water. So this time we've selected a couple cards. Mr. Ree had a list out here, sent it over to me, said, hey, what do you want to add to this? We threw in a couple more things, and bam, came up with this list. A lot of great cards in here, a lot of things that people talk about, people play, you see in people's deck list. You look at it and you're like, I don't know if that's good. What kind of ratios do I run this in? And so that's what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about it. We're going to put things into different categories based on how we feel their usage is and kind of what they're for. So we have highly playable. This is going to be things that are played in almost every deck or extremely important for like most decks. It's very, very flexible kind of cards there. Niche but key. These are cards that see less usage, but in the decks that they are popular in, they are absolutely necessary, right? They're things that are basically vital to whatever combos you're playing, or they deal with certain strategies like counterplay in some cases. Like Freezing Hail is a perfect counterplay card for Tristan, for example, right? Tristan's a champion that has to attack always, so Freezing Hail is very, very effective into that kind of mechanic. We're going to have rare usage, which is cards that are good but are only used in very, very specific situations. They're not make or break, but they're still good and worth mentioning. And then Power Crept cards. Power Crept cards is probably the most important category because it talks about cards that used to be good, and there's a newer printing of a card that is basically the same thing or better, or fulfills the same role but better. These would be cards where we would not use them together in conjunction to have multiple of that counter. We would only use the newer version of the card. So if we look back at the fire deck list we talked about, or the fire tier list we talked about, we had cards like Ignited Stab. Ignited Stab is almost entirely replaced by Vicious Slice. It's better cost, it's easier to use, no usage of prep counters, anything like that. And then unplayable. These cards are terrible. They've either been power crept to the point where they're completely unplayable, or something came out that basically made this card completely useless. When we look at the fire list, Crimson Tear was a perfect example. It was a 2/2 that has bonuses for level 1 and level 2. The problem is Reprogram has just slaughtered that card. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and thanks again for having me here on the Creative Shock.
Beautiful. I mean, spoken like the true master that we know. Look, first of all, I want to just add to that. Like, I think what's important too is we only selected a few amount of cards, and we do that based on like what I have seen started playing. And I guess once, like, when we talk about this unplayable cards that just don't really sit in the meta. Like, these aren't all the water cards. We're not going to go through all the water cards, but we think these are the ones we're probably seeing, and this is why and why not, and why we're developing and building this tier list around that. So this, of course, can shift. And I think maybe starting with that, we'll just talk about here. I was like, I know we did Fragment. We'll do the 3 spirits. Fragment, Spirit of Water, and Serene. And where is Fragment? I can't see it, but I thought I had it there.
It's middle row on the left, fourth from the
there
left.
It is. Thank you. I don't know if we went through this fire last week when we made this, sorry, a few weeks ago now, but Spirit of Water, I would say when I first got into Grand Archive, people called it as like the counter of, if you liked countering people, you should play water. Like, if you liked saying no and you were first interested in the game, that's kind of the water vibe. And then more recently in playing the game, I still play the water allies, and now more recently Nico and the Guardian playstyles. Kind of been really the 2 playstyles I have seen. I mean, did we say it's a highly playable thing? I think that, like, a Spirit of Water, am I going to play a Spirit of Water deck? I don't think it's as priority right now than I would say Wind and Fire, but I think you could still play Spirit of Water. It's probably the most common and playable out of the 3. I would then play Niche but key for Spirit of Serene, because I believe I've only really seen it with the Nico decks. That's really the only time I would have seen it. It could go down to rare usage, but I'm only putting it there because of the Nico strength that I've seen in Nico decks. And then Fragment I've never seen play, and I wouldn't, doesn't make unplayable. That's my There's a Nova start of the day. What do you think?
It's actually a pretty good start to the game. I would honestly be willing to give you Niche Baki on the Serene Spirit of Water, and the reason for that is because the Nico deck plays it so efficiently, and it's a popular deck. I'm a little biased towards Nico because so I'm from Canada, but I tend to play in Southern California the most. Southern California has, I believe, 5 of the 7 store champs were run by the same Nico player.
Wow.
And he runs both the regular Spirit of Water and the Serene Spirit of Water. Nico deck with Serene Spirit of Water is integral as an option. Having both spirits is really nice if you can fit it into the deck, but having the Serene Spirit of Water being able to glimpse for an opener is really, really strong. When paired with Icebound Slam, a lot of people are like, oh, but you won't be able to play Icebound Slam on the first turn. The thing is, in that deck, a lot of the time you can just backup charge on first turn and you instantly go up to 8 influence. So overall, like the value you gain from running Serene Spirit to Glimpse is actually very, very good. So it's a little bit better than the rare usage, but it is still more on the niche side. The only other deck list I believe that has seen competitive play of this spirit was when Serene Fire Luxemzander was popular. There was actually a point towards the end of that deck's life where you would run Serene Spirit of Water in your sideboard with 4 Fracture Eyes and 1 Song of Frost. And the reason for this is because if you played against Diana, Fire Diana, while she was really meta at the time, one of the best ways to win the matchup was to Fracture Eyes her gun. Or if you could Song of Frost, the attack that was coming in to kill you. So there were a lot of decks where they play like a one-hit kill combo, whether it's a Rending Flames, a Fiery Momentum, a Giant Tenoris, Creation's Will Cleave if you're Jimmy Lee. So what you could do in those decks is that you could bring in your 1 of Song of Frost and you could Luxera's Map and take the Song of Frost as the Luxera's Map card instead of taking your usual like Lightweaver's Assault or Luxem Sight, and that would help you win the matchup. Or if you didn't have the Fracture Eyes early enough, you could also do the same thing. But if you were able to Fracture Eyes a Shadow's Twin and remove a Taser Shot from the game, or even just Fracture Eyes a Taser Shot as the bullet, you were basically able to put yourself in such a safe position that you would be able to recover against Diana and actually go for a victory.
That's very like it's such a I guess that counter style that we see that some cards and how important the sideboard is coming in. May one of the reasons it's changed to be such a diverse a list. You know, they double. What do they go from 8 to 12? Or I can't remember the number now, but they shifted that to give that choice of players, and that shows that strength. Yeah. So you agree with my ordering? We moved.
Yeah, and let's just touch on Fragmented Spirit of Water real quick. So I actually recently released a video on my channel where I talked about the MRC URs. I gave them rankings based on how the card sits in the current meta, the design of the card, and how I think it looks for like future potential, and then the fun factor. I actually think Fragmented Spirit of Water might be one of the worst cards out there, specifically because the decks where you want to glimpse with this don't usually go level 3, and having that extra card early on is, I personally feel like, is more valuable than the glimpse. But because it's a glimpse spirit and it does give you an extra card if you level it to 3, I think that overall the card design on it is fantastic. It's playable in Water Merlin, but outside of that, I don't really see too much value in playing it.
I agree. Just never seen it. Then this one you've added, the Aqua, is it Vitae?
Aqua Vitae, yeah. Aqua Vitae.
Aqua Vitae. Look, I've never seen it played. Rule of thumb for me is that if it's a cleric item, you're not playing it because clerics don't get to play the game. That's pretty drilled into me early on as a novice player. Sometimes I get to verse cleric players, but it doesn't happen, so I don't really get to see cleric items played. So I would put this unplayable. Tell me your thoughts around this card.
Okay, so I want you to look at. We're doing a small exercise, and I think this will be fun for the sake of the video. People who watch this will actually probably gain a lot of knowledge out of this. I want you to remove the line of text that says class bonus and read the card.
I can sacrifice or draw a card. Then if there are 3 or more age counters on this Aqua, draw an additional card. So it's a two cost free draw for a sacrifice if I play it.
Yeah.
So I do the spring leap, and then I can also, over 3 turns, I can get a bonus or 2 double draw for 2 costs.
True.
Which is
if
pretty
you have
good.
the class bonus. But if you don't have the class bonus, this is simply a 2-cost draw a card water.
Oh yeah, because I don't get the age counters because that's the class bonus.
So how bad could it actually be?
Yeah, true. 2 costs draw a card.
Because it also gives you a target for things like Fracture Eyes.
Yeah.
So if you have a Frostborn Paladin in your hand, you could Fracture Eyes your Aqua Vitae and then in response to the Fracturize, you can sacrifice it if you want to draw a card. Or you can leave it there. It becomes a Fantasia, and then you can tap it for reservable every single turn. Like you
Wow,
rest
that's
it.
so crazy. Fracturizing, then on your own response, sacrificing it.
Yeah.
So you get
So
to draw,
if,
then putting...
yeah, so
Jeez.
if you sacrifice it, you get the draw. If you don't
No
sacrifice it,
way.
you get the,
No
you get
way
the
people are
fractal.
doing this. Did you see someone do... Have you seen someone do this? Or you're just cooking up here, observing from the outside? Dude?
I've seen people use the card
Holy.
before. I don't think it's necessarily that good. I would put this in like very rare usage.
Yeah.
Because honestly, if you played like Water Vanitas, Aqua Vitae is probably a fantastic potion for you.
Yeah.
Just because this card in Cleric is really good. You can also technically get the age counters without Cleric if you play Alcahest, but most people would never do that, so it's not really that viable. To me, this card is just 2-cost draw card. So it's like a very simple cycle card. If you need a card that cycles, and it's water
Wow.
because you're playing like a lot of Imbue, Aqua Vitae probably slightly better than playing Backstep.
Aqua Vitae. This could be like the definite title for the video. I'm blown away. Aqua Vitae. That's the combo deck.
I mean, it's just an interesting concept, right? When
Yeah,
you look at a
it
card,
definitely
you're
is.
like, oh, it's a Cleric card, it's trash. Like, why would I even read it? But you know,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, worst comes to worst, this is a 2-cost draw card,
Mhm.
which, I mean, it can be the worst. It can unbrick you in a lot of situations.
And I think just
you
bringing
also don't
to
have
the
to draw immediately too. You can just leave it on the field and draw whenever you want.
yeah, and I think bringing to the attention of the idea of fracturizing your own things is already like a big step for a new player. Let alone then thinking about I'm going to do it, then sacrifice and still get the benefit of that is just like
2 steps.
multiple steps. Yeah, 2 steps of
I mean, like
brain growth.
the
right?
big one with Fracturize is like fracturize your own power cell is like a really common thing that people
Yep.
do. If you don't have a use for your power cell, like you're not playing a power cell focused deck, fracturizing your power cell is great because now it's a reservable and it's a token still.
So good. All right. Next is it's very hard to see on my computer. The photos is really small, but this is the Azure Blade.
Oh, Erendite. I love this card.
Does it go niche but key or highly playable? I mean, I feel like
I think it goes niche
it's
key. It's
yeah. I think
it's
it's purely for Lorraine, right? Like
it's
Lorraine
a
decks
Lorraine
and
and
Soul.
Mordred
Or...
thing. So you can play this in any element of Ensol because it doesn't matter what element of swords you bring out.
Yep.
And it's a 1-cost or lower, so it actually does apply. You can also play this yourself in Water Merlin, in Water Lorraine, and in Mordred. There was a deck at Chicago that Fome played, and he is... So he does a lot of like production stuff. He's actually a great player and cooks great decks. So he was playing an Icebound Slam Fractal of Rain Xander that levels up into Mordred. And so what he does is he was playing Quicksilver Grail, and he would Quicksilver Grail the Erendite and level up into Mordred. And so what he would do is he would just say, okay, banish the Quicksilver Grail. In comes Erendite, pay costs from my memory, and then he would banish like 5 attack cards that he milled with either his Fractal of Rain or his Icebound Slam, and Erendite swing you for like 13. Or he would just slice and dice kill you.
That's so cool.
Yeah,
That's
it was a really,
great
really, really
design.
neat concept. But
It's cool
I think
to see, like,
Erendite's a
Mordred
really
playing.
good card. It's cool. It defines the concept of Water Warrior. Like, this is the Water Warrior card. So that's why, for me, it is niche, but it is very, very key in that archetype.
Sure. Baby Blue Slime. Does it make rare usage? Does it niche but key? I mean, it is been playing in slime. I see it in some slime decks. I don't see it in others. I think it's a really, for a, 2-cost for your slime, you can prevent 2. I think it's really powerful. And also getting the +1 to make it a 1/3. It's kind of like a Kahazi Trapper, but it fits in the slime decks. I think it's just an alright slime card that sits in the slime deck.
I think Baby Blue is not... I don't think it's key. I think it's got rare usage. I think it's alright to play in the deck if you're looking for more slimes. I think overall, there are better slimes you would want to hit than Baby Blue. The thing is, it's like an alright ally that you can use to like defensively trade for things. But the thing is, you don't really want the ally that's able to deal damage also be the same ally that can rest. The thing is, a lot of the time, like, it's just a worse Korhazi Trapper. The only benefit that it is that it's a slime.
Correct. The slime for banishing slimes and storm slime, all that kind of stuff, or using a slime explosion, just that slime counter. Blue slime is next. I think his is unplayable. I think that, yes, it is a slime, but I think with the decks like Pride 4, it's really kind of not the Pride meta. You're not really Sylvie's not really going to get the high prize to play high cards. It can't. You're not gonna. By the time you build up that way, you're probably gonna use something else to consume early on with your momentum. And I just don't think it has value on the board. I just think it's just gonna sit there for long and really doesn't do much. And when you're finally there, it's probably too late. I think the gameplay is too fast for you to build on it. And I don't think it's a playable card.
Yeah, Blue Slime is an interesting one. So Blue Slime's original usage that was really funny was you would play a Blue Slime and then you would play Covenant of Thorns on it. So anytime something would attack it, you would put a buff counter on it. And so if they didn't have an answer to your Blue Slime, like Destroy Ally or like a Zephyr or something like that, they wouldn't be able to break the ally link. So Blue Slime was like the unkillable god machine. It basically stood there and continually got stronger and stronger every time you hit champion. So Blue Slime is interesting to me because I want to say that it was a power crept card because there's better targets now for Covenant of Thorns, but I don't know if that's necessarily true. I almost do want to put it in unplayable. This card doesn't really do anything because you rarely ever go to Pride 4, and it doesn't have Taunt or Intercept. Because when I think of like Blue Slime's usage and what people actually enjoyed using it for, it was basically you take the damage for me and you become this unkillable machine. If I manage to have something that gives me a level to kill you, like Beast Bondiers, for example, it was great. But nowadays, you're going to see Covenant of Thorns being put on things like Lustrous Slime, Slime King, etc., things like that. So I think I do almost want to say it's power crept. It's like on the borderline of being power crept or not, but I would put it there.
All right. Cascading Round. I feel this comes into the Water Diner. I've seen very minimal Water Diner players, a lot of Water Ally players. We haven't seen that many. Where it sits, maybe row usage because it's played in some, but I don't even think unplayable. I don't think the effects, I think they wouldn't run that many bullets. They'd probably prioritize other bullets in that space, not cascading. I mean, on hit top card, let you go to the graveyard. Like, are you going, if you're going to play a Water Diner Allies deck, are you looking for that mill? Is that what you're looking for? Is there really a mill diner space? I'd probably say it comes in an unplayable, and I wouldn't be looking to play it in that way.
Personally, I think Cascading Round is actually really good. Last season, Cascading Round and Plated Bullet were the commonly used two bullets for... it was Cascading Round, Plated Bullet, and Taser Shot were the three bullets that were commonly used in Water Diana allies. The value of Cascading Round is that in an allies deck, you don't really mind milling cards because whatever you have in hand is like, or whatever you end up milling is most likely not going to make or break your game. The thing is, if you do high roll them and you mill like a Fracturize, or if you're running any other form of floating memory, your Frostborn Paladin going online with the buff counter draw a card is actually extremely valuable. So Cascading Round versus like Plated Bullet, both of them deal 2 damage. Both of them are just renewable bullets. The only effect is that Cascading Round allows you to put the top card of your deck into your graveyard on hit. So it's like a slightly added effect that I think has the potential to give you a huge bonus win con.
Yeah.
So Cascading Round for me was highly playable.
Are we saying
it was
highly
like
playable?
Bullet.
But like we're talking about, like it's not highly playable in the sense it can play across multiple decks, right? We're saying it's purely for highly playable. It's that niche. It's key for Water Diana decks.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. The other thing is like Cascading Round can be run in any gun deck. So like there were people playing so before MRC came out, people would run like Loaded Thoughts, they would run Prototype Pistol with Cascading Round in Nico, so that they could mill cards, so they could have the flow memory.
I've never seen this gameplay. Like I've seen Lorraine's bring out weapons and like use them and be like,
you would
oh
play
my
level
god.
1 Lorraine. Level 1 Lorraine brings out Prototype Pistol. Then you'd bring out Cascading Round and you would shoot them and then mill the card. And then when you go to Nico, you'd have the floating memory available to you already because you were milling cards. There weren't a lot of ways to mill cards that were efficient, and Cascading Round plus a gun was like, it's 3 damage still, so you would just use it anyways, right?
Okay. So you're calling it's higher playable. It's gonna make it up there.
I think Niche Baki is probably a little bit better. It's like it is really just for like gun decks, which are not that common.
Okay. Diffusive Block. I love this card. I like cards with floating memory. I think Prevent 2 is nice. Niche for key. I think it's highly playable, but I don't think it's rare usage. I think if you're playing in those Guardians decks, it's a nice floating. It's good to mill,
Yeah,
and
the
it's
only
just a
thing
good
that
block.
stops it from being like highly playable, like played everywhere, is just the fact that it's class bonus Guardian.
Yeah, I think it's a lovely
Great card. Prevent 2 damage, fast, simple and easy.
Drown Cut. I have seen in a few of those water Xander decks. I mean, it has floating class bonus for your. It's a 1 cost 2 damage. I mean, this is that highly playable, but I think it's just niche per key. I think it's a nice floating for an assassin deck.
I actually don't like Drowned Cut.
My.
This is more of a personal opinion on the card. I think that a lot of the time that you would run Drowned Cut, you're gonna run it in like an allies focused deck, and at that point, like, just
want to have an ally that's
slice.
Okay, vicious slice.
The only kind of decks I can really think of where you need the floating and it's like that much more important is like that exact deck that I was talking about with Fome, where he used Xander into Mordred, where it's like floating memory the whole time, right? Because it's floating as an assassin, but it's also when Mordred gets on the field, all attacks are floating anyways.
So you think this then that you're saying it's more of a power creep? There's definitely better cards in that set.
I personally think it's power crept, and the only reason I think it's power crept is because it does 2 damage instead of 3. If it was a 3 power attack, I think it would be probably still in like really, really good range. Because if I recall correctly, Drown Cut is a 1 cost card?
Yeah,
or
correct.
2 cost?
1 cost.
Yeah, so it's a 1 cost floating memory attack for 2. And so you're trading off the 1 extra damage for the floating memory.
Yep.
And I personally think that the 1 extra attack matters, or the 1 extra like power matters more, because there's a lot of the time you're playing against like allies that are like 2/3s and killing them on their 3 life break point. I think is more important.
Sure.
So like, I guess just to reiterate, like Drown Cut is not an unplayable card, guys. I just much prefer using a card like Vicious Slice. If you need Drown Cut because you want like a higher water count for things like Icebound Slam, Cerulean, etc., it's probably better in those cases. Otherwise, the damage is probably more valuable to you.
Yeah, I agree. Flash free. Cleric, class bonus. This costs 2 less to activate, so it's currently at 4. I mean, it can be 2 if you're a cleric, and then you can negate a card activation unless the controller pays its level. I've seen it played. I mean, pays its level. I don't think, level 3, they got to pay 3 cards. Is that outrageous? Is it better than Frostbind? But it's a 4 cost if I'm not a cleric. How many people are going to be playing cleric? Goes down to 2, that's alright, but to 1 less than a Frostbind, it probably could, disrupt. How many people play cleric? I'm going to go unplayable, would be my thought. Woohoo! We're on the board, baby!
This card is probably only played in Watermerlin, where you have like a lot of level abuse. Otherwise, like in cleric itself, the concept is that you would banish herbs for or is that you would most likely banish herbs to get levels and then play flash freeze.
Yeah.
So like if you sacrifice the herbs
up.
that say +1 level until end of turn, you could like pop 3 of them and say flash freeze for like 6, and then they'd be like, oh, okay, well I guess it's banished.
Yeah. I guess that idea of leveling, that'd be cool, I guess.
But yeah, pretty unplayable in my opinion. It's like way too expensive to use outside of cleric.
Yeah, 4 cost. Fractal of Intrusion. Now I was like, I originally liked this card early on when I was playing with fractals, and it kind of when I was very novice to the game. And then recently I've actually been playing a bit of Nico build and playing around having fun with Nico. And then I was thinking about, I don't know if it worked this way, but like you were like, oh, I forgot this card, and I was like, if I banish, and then I can look at your target opponent's memory and discard a card from it. I was like, wow, does that actually stop? Like if I'm looking at Tristan, does that those stifling traps that are sitting there? And I'm just like, yeah, see you later, mate. Put that in your grave order scene, can be really strong. And I was like, maybe this should go into my Nico deck. I'm kind of vibing it. So I'm like, it's a reversible card for 3. If a lot of the decks are playing refracting missile for that damage, I think it's more playable in that sense. And maybe if it does work for like stifling trap and those in Warriors Tristans, does it come highly playable? Because I think seeing people's memory and playing. But anyway, that's my thoughts. I mean, I'm actually liking the card. You may say no, but I just think if it doesn't interact like with stifling, then I'm not too happy with. But at least gets rid of them and could throw a curveball.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I like Fractal Intrusion a lot. It's one of my favorite cards in Water. I think it's actually more under the rare usage side, because unless you're running a deck that does run a lot of floating, you're not going to use it. And even in those decks, it's not always the best answer for you. This card for me is best paired with things like Chilling Touch. I think Chilling Touch as a slow 1 cost, look at your opponent's, or banish a random card from your opponent's memory. It'll return it at your opponent's next end step. So that denies them an influence for an entire turn. That is an extremely highly playable card. That card is fantastic.
Well, I'm putting it right there. I love this card. That's one of my favorite
memory.
cards. Yeah,
so if you Chilling Touch into a
Yep.
Fractal of Intrusion, banish the Chilling Touch, you're able to remove 2 of their influence for at least a whole rotation of turns, and it affects them for their next materialization too. So like Chilling Touch into Fractal of Intrusion is a really strong combo, but Chilling Touch by itself, really good. Fractal of Intrusion by itself, a little harder to use, kind of needs more like other pieces to make the combo work. So for me, it sits under rare usage.
I think that, like I said, I haven't used it yet. I think that when you mentioned, I was like, There were times I've played a lot of times against Necrotic where he's Tristan decks. I'm just practicing the Nico and like so many things. I'm like, what a DG, and then Starfield's like, look at me, and it's like, I could try and disrupt in that space. That could be interesting to use.
Yeah, so a really good example of like, because the concept of reservables are really good, right? People love having extra like resources in that regard. So I'm actually going to skip ahead on the tier list. We're going to jump over to Fractal of Rain. Fractal of Rain is a 2-cost imbue 2. So imbue means that when you pay the reserve cost of this card, you reserve the card's face up. The imbue checks that they're both the same element, and if it is, then the card becomes imbued. Then you turn those cards face down. So the imbued on the Fractal of Rain says at the beginning of your recollection, target player puts the top card of their deck into their graveyard. So you can choose to mill yourself or to mill your opponent. A lot of the time you're going to mill yourself. Sometimes you might want to mill your opponent if you already have what you need. But this card is also a reservable. This is like the most playable card in Water right now. I think it is actually unbelievably fantastic and is the #1 key to the mill archetype actually working.
Do you think, like, I was thinking the other day, like, the power of Glimpse is so strong because people can order and see what they want to put in priority, and like you're seeing that more and more overdraw cards because they like that. Like you said, if you're glimpsing 4, you're seeing the next 4 cards and the next 4 steps. So cards where you can mill opponents, I think, is becoming getting a greater strength. Like I was playing Hidden Enclave. I think it's a 2-cost. Domain
at the beginning of every player's recollection.
Yeah, and like I was just trialing it and just having, if you can play 2 domain, I was playing a domain Tenora spill, but just having like you are glimpsing, psych, here's your milling 2, it kind of like ruins that momentum, and it does disrupt that momentum, and I think it's building more into that strength because we're seeing more player play the glimpse, especially like Scout the Lands, Surveil, and the other that help you look.
Think about it a lot too. So
yeah.
A good example is at Ascent Chicago, I played Fragmented Fire Merlin. While I know that deck isn't like top tier, I just have a lot of fun playing it. Played against a Nico who had 2 Floating Memory Engrave and a Fractal of Rain up, and I glimpsed for 7, and I reordered my cards. And I actually reordered my cards hoping that they would mill the top card for me, and they did.
Wow.
But it's one of those things that like it makes you think about the game totally different, right?
Yeah, right.
So what I did was I had them mill an Ascension, because I knew that I could, at the beginning of my recollection, 2 down Cruxite it back into my hand and then draw another card, which was a water card or a wind card. So I drew the wind card Ascension, and then on the Ascension, I drew the next Cruxite, which was enough for me to rotate it a second time.
That's so cool.
But like, there are other options too. Like I could have put a Floating Memory on top, hoping they would mill me to mill into a floating. Yeah. But like again, Crux decks are probably the worst ones to mill the opponent. Like if you're playing against like a Neos deck or something, or like a Tristan deck, like milling them could be really good, because if you mill a Shadow Strike or mill a Dungeon Guide or mill like a Mastermind Scheme, like you're in a great place, right?
I think we could probably shift to, like, we're doing the same thing here with the Refracting Missile. Do you think then Refracting Missile becomes, it does damage for the amount of fractals you have, so you quickly can develop a 2 damage or a 3 damage for a 3 cost, and it also has Floating Memory.
Fast 1 floating is great.
Yeah,
fast floating, deal 1 damage is like kind of good to me.
Yeah, I think that's a highly playable card. I might also bring up...
That card is going to get better, too, because the new cards in A and B, like, we were teased a card that basically said sacrifice any number of fractals, deal that many plus 1 damage. So, like, Fractal Refracting Missiles plus Fractals plus that card is probably going to be, like, an actual combo in A and B.
Fractal decks. People just, like, building their board of fractals. It's gonna be
people have always wanted to build fractal decks. Like, fractal decks have been one of those really explored archetypes. No one's just found something that worked well enough until MRC came out.
Yeah,
Like
I think it's
the popular ones were Merlin and Rye could play Incendiary Fractal, and they would do it to clear allies, right? So Incendiary Fractal Merlin was really good for the Merlin mirror, where a lot of people were running allies, and then Rye, when Fog came out in ALC, like more Fog cards, that was fantastic for Rye because it gave him more answers to play into wind allies or water allies.
I think I tried like when I just like the idea of building on your board reversibles. You know, like I'm gonna play it there, I'm gonna use it for later. Like it's that like you said, that idea of resource. I think people like that resource game.
Reservables are fantastic. Like there's so much resource gain out of it.
Nico, I think we'll just bring out here because she is a water champion. Do we say she's highly playable at the moment?
She's pretty playable right now.
Yeah, I think she's doing really well.
And
that's
current
I think
standard. Nico's very
we might
good.
bring some stuff out here that I think Mage Bane Lash is coming out because of that, and Ravishing Finale is probably the big change. Mage Bane was already in the deck, right? Ravishing Finale is the new card that was just recently added, which kind of made the whole combo of milling playable now, and we're seeing a lot more in this season.
So Ravishing Finale for me is niche but key. It's really important in that deck, but you can't run it. You can't really run it in any other decks because it doesn't do enough.
Correct.
Since an ego bonus. I actually think Magebane Lash is a rare usage, personally. You could maybe put it in niche but key. I don't think Magebane Lash wins you the game, like 90% of the time you play Nico.
Mm-hmm.
There are very specific instances where Magebane Lash is really strong. So Creeping Torments, it's really good against Lightweaver's Assault. It's fairly good against like small forms of chip damage that are non-combat damage. But the thing with Magebane Lash is a lot of the time you're bringing out Magebane Lash in slow, grindy matches where you just need to deal more damage.
Yep.
I feel like in the current meta of the game, those don't really exist for the most part. Most games are done pretty quickly. You're killing your opponent on turn 4.
Yeah, it's
you go
faster.
Nico and then you Ravishing them for game. Like you're at that point when you're playing Nico right now. I don't think Magebane Lash is that used, specifically because there are just faster ways to kill people than getting extra lash counters.
Cool.
So like, good card, very good card for Nico. It's just the decks that it's really good against are not that played right now.
Yeah, like I said, I think it's only just, Nico has Lash, I'm going to put Lash counters on. It kind of suits the vibe. I'm going to put it together, right? Like that's what
like
would be
there
my
are specific
niche
combos that people really like with Magebane Lash. Like if you have 4 or 5 Lash counters, playing Tidal Sweep and cleaving for 4, 5, or 6 is like kind of relevant.
Mm-hmm.
But even then, it doesn't come up very often, so I don't think it's that good.
If you want, we'll shift over maybe to look at like I've got the Tideholder Claymore. Like, are you saying that because there are other swords, is the Tideholder Claymore another sword you'd be bringing out? I've also got the cross station.
Well, it's not even necessarily
longsword.
weapons. It's just that you can kill people with Icebound Slam. You kill people with buffed Frostborn Paladins, with Fractal like refracting missile and freezing hail. Like you just have so many ways to pump damage out for Nico that all you need to do is like push them to like 15, 16 damage counters, or even like 13, 14 damage counters. You play Ravishing Finale and you usually win the game if they don't have anything to block it. Because if you Ravishing them for 6, you gain 2 lash counters yourself. Like let's say they're at 12 damage counters, right? It puts them to 18, means they're milling 36 plus 2. So if they're milling 38 cards, they might have like 3 cards left in their deck. And if they're a deck that draws a lot of cards, like a Tristan or like a Merlin or anything like that, they're just going to die.
Yep.
If they're a slime deck, they're probably also going to die.
Yep, because they're trying to mill through. Do you play, like I've been playing with the Claymore. I think it's a really interesting. I think because you're milling so much, doesn't make niche with key. I've only, like I said, for me from water, I'm only really seeing it in recently now with Nico decks, and the idea is I'm trying to mill and grave, and this is a card. Yes, it's 2 costs, but it costs 1 less in my class, and then it actually reduces for every. And quickly with Icebound Slams, which we might bring up because we've talked to it a few times now, I'm very quickly getting to that 10 cost of water in my deck.
I think this is a rare usage. It's super hard countered by. It's extremely hard countered by Nullifying Lantern, which makes the card completely unplayable, and it's also just a card you don't need most of the time. I also think that Crystalline Longsword is pretty like rare usage. I personally think it's just a worse sort of seeking.
Yep.
It's like cool because you get an extra damage if you have 4 water, but like a lot of the time you're gonna bring it out and you're gonna be like, it's still just 1 damage, brother.
Yeah, it's not a big hit up. So then Icebound Slam. Where do you put this?
OP.
Is this
Card's OP.
Yeah, I think this card's is so much fun.
Too good.
I think it's the best. If you haven't played Water Deck, this kind of made me want to play Water Deck. I was like, oh, I have enough cards to Icebound Slam you. Here's an Icebound Slam for 8 damage to your face, man. At level 1. You need to level up or die because I have another one. You know, I think it's
Icebound
and
Slam
then
is like
you're
can
milling.
Tell it's a good card because people play it in not Guardian all the time.
Yep.
Like so many people play this card in not Guardian, and then on top of that, it's like even if you don't hit 5 water, if you hit 2 floating, the card is amazing.
Yeah. And like it's
and
7
it
to 7 cost. Like we're talking about like cards with high cost value that get played. Like this is probably one of the highest, and yet like you're saying, it's so valuable and played without. Like what?
Yeah, beautiful. Like when we first looked at this card on League, we were like, dude, 7 costs. There's no way this is gonna see play. Now every water deck in the world plays this card because it's so good.
Yeah, slam it out, man. Love it.
Icebound Tristan, sure, why not?
Yeah,
we just tap out and hit you for an Icebound Slam for 8. Like I don't know, Icebound Slam is a fantastic card. I think it's highly playable. You can build decks around this card, and it's not like a huge detriment for the most part.
Yeah, I think it's wonderful. Snow Fairy. Not as good as Dream Fairy. Is good for allies. Mishbaki or highly playable. I'm going to say that it's... I mean, resting... I think it's something you have to consider when playing... If you're playing a water deck or... It's a strong card. It's invisible. You know, who's got true sight. You're going to be able to stop that unit from attacking. I mean, it's not... Like we said, Dream Fairy puts it back into their memory. But, I mean, it sits it on the field and makes it unable to move.
I think Snow Fairy in the last meta in ALC season was probably one of the best cards out there because it stopped shield mates, it stopped hasty messengers. Even now, I would still say it's highly playable. It has a lot of decently good targets. It turns off an interceptor. It turns off a taunted unit, something like that. It's just a good staple unit to have in an allies deck, and even non-allies decks. It's kind of nice. Like Nico needs more answers to things like taunt and intercept. Snow Fairy could be that answer for you sometimes. Drop down a Snow Fairy to deal with a Stalwart Shieldmate, smoke bombs their Swift Recruit, ravishing for game. Right, like it's not an unrealistic time to sit there and be like, "Wow, I'm gonna just pop a Snow Fairy on there."
Yeah. Nice 3 cost. Song of Frost, counter, banish card. I mean, it's not really played for this tamer skill, but if unit's attacking, you just end the combat phase. I think that's just highly playable in a lot of counters for attacking. Like you're just gonna it just stops combat phase. Brilliant card.
It's one of the 2 cards that actually has that stops combat phase. So the more important one, so between the 2 of them, it's Song of Frost and Tactical Retreat. Tactical Retreat makes your unit distant, and if they're being attacked, it ends the combat phase. Song of Frost is really important because the difference between those 2 things, and I'm gonna double check this before I say it because I don't want to sound really stupid.
Oh, stop it.
I'm
here. You'll be fine once.
It's actually the same for both. So because it says end the combat phase, it means that as the phase ends, I'll banish all triggers, activations, materializations, and effects on the stack. So what that means is if I attack you and you decide to say alternate cost Resolute Stand, activate, and I say, okay, so that means that you now, because you paid the cost of the alternate cost, you now skip your next draw. I can say Song of Frost on the stack. So what that does is it banishes it. If you don't have any response to it, it ends the combat phase. You lose your Resolute Stand. I'm no longer attacking you, and you still can't draw for your next turn.
Wow. Because
that was part of your cost, not part of the resolution of the card. So Song of Frosting your own attack sometimes can be extremely valuable.
Counterplay. Never seen it done.
Because if you play something in response to it, and I don't want that to go through, I can Song of Frost.
Yeah. It's cool. I think it's a beautiful card.
The only thing Song of Frost doesn't do is it doesn't banish an attack card if it's an attack card being used, because the attack card, the resolution of the attack card goes into graveyard to start the combat phase.
Yep. Lost in Thoughts, I think, is highly playable. I think it's got a floating memory.
Hands down the best card.
Yeah, I think it's definitely changing the game. You meant these cards that are banishing, I can then banish and then draw that many. Like, it's huge. It's huge. It's like crazy. Like, it's just a wonderful card.
There's a lot of combos. So Lost in Thought allows you to utilize things like your Icebound Slam, your Fractals of Rain in just a fantastic way. There's a lot of people who've been playing things like Orchestrated Seizure so they can try to use your floating memory, or even like Merlin effect to try to banish cards, or like Scavenging Raccoon. You can actually play Lost in Thought in response to that. And it depends on what the card says. If the card says target card, what that means is they can choose a card, and then you can actually make the effect fizzle.
Wow, like it's a counter, like, well, I'm going to banish it before.
Yeah, so there's a difference between choose
in response,
and target.
okay. Yeah,
so Merlin's effect, for example, says choose.
Yep.
And this means that you do it on resolution. So once the effect resolves, then Merlin chooses the card. There's no response available to it. If it says target card, you have to target the card when that goes on the stack.
Right, so like our raccoons or the...
yeah, exactly.
Sea Sprite Diver?
Yep.
Or we may Shifter's Sea Sprite Diver. She's a card here that has that on enter, banish a target card in the graveyard. It can multiple cards at 3 cost. I would say... I see a few people had these in like 1 or 2, like that area carry 1 or 2 in the deck, and I would say more when we saw the water allies and more of a counter. Does it move down the meta change, maybe into rare usage? I mean, I don't think I'm going to run it in my Nico deck, but I might run 1 or 2. Maybe niche but key. I'd be sitting in the middle here with this. I think it's... If I'm going to play water, I'm not really playing the water allies at the moment. I'd be playing more of my Nico. I didn't really see it fitting in the deck. Yeah,
it's like a good in-between there.
Yeah.
There's actually a lot of people who do run this in their Nico just because it is a 2/3. It's 4 cost, though, so it's a little bit harder. And then because it says target card in graveyard, not you may, that means that if your opponent has nothing in their graveyard, you have to banish from your own graveyard. So there's like sometimes when you wouldn't want to play a Sea Sprite Diver. So between the two, it's like hard to say. It is really good in most allies decks. Even some decks that aren't super ally focused, it's pretty good. So niche but key. I want to say it is niche but key because it fits allies decks really well, and there's like situations where in other decks it's a fantastic option, like Nico, for example.
Sure. Lunette the Frostbinder. When I first started to play this game, everybody had a Lunette. If you're playing water, you're playing Lunette. She's a rest. Balance was kind of the thing. You know, you're running with Gildas, usually in water allies. You're trying to maintain that balance. Having people enter against allies, very strong. I would say she is playable across multiple kinds of decks. I don't think she's a weak card. I think a 1/4 and has that rest is something to definitely consider when deck building. Would be my view at this.
I think she's more on the niche but key side now because most of the time you're going to see her only in allies decks. Yep. And there are more ways to deal with Lunette than before. Like before, allies were definitely the most prevalent thing out there. Allies were really, really frustrating to play against because they were so strong. Right? Wind allies was great. There's wind allies Lorraine, wind allies Tenoris. Now there's the wind robots, which can be like hybrids. But water allies has become less popular. The thing with Lunette is a lot of the time, if you want to deal with a Lunette, you deal damage to her in someone's recollection. Because the balance effect is a continuously checked effect. So what happens is, if I say in your recollection, I'm going to stifling trap your Lunette, you go to recollect, she instantly dies. Yeah, she'll just die as you go to draw your card.
Yeah, crazy. I guess not seeing it played so much in the meta with the meta, I haven't seen that or considered that idea that, you know, aiming for it in that recollection phase.
Like, she's really good in the right matchups and in the right decks, but they're just not as popular as they used to be, so I don't think she's as... She no longer fits the standard of highly playable.
Cool. Scepter of Lumina.
Nerf Scepter. It's too good. It's too good.
Scepter of Lumina. Like, it's got the bonus damage for his turn. You then, first thing, other water cards, you can bring it down. I'm sure we've talked about the story how I was playing against someone and they said, hey, did you know you could actually bring out Scepter? And I was like, no, I didn't know I could do that. Like, I just thought when you're playing Underwater, I'm misreading that. And so then I did that. And then he's like, Frostbind. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, oh, you can Frost activate. Yeah. I don't know if you heard this story once. And then I was like, oh. He's like, yeah, can't play it. Yeah, I was like, thanks for telling me that. And also like flipping it on my head. So I learned twice and I learned in a hard way. But... You know, I've never forgotten that, and I will never forget that. But I think it's just,
in the water matchup, instead of materializing it, it says you may activate this from your material deck if you. Yeah, so you can crossbind the activation of the card.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, but I know that. But I mean, huge 4 damage each time you level up. It's got the ability to activate versus water, and you've also got that banish for 2 cards. Great card, indeed. Storm of Thorns. I really love this card. It's probably my favorite card in the water. Highly playable. I think, 2 cost 1. I think this maybe niche but key. I want to play highly playable. I mean, all it does is prevent one, but it does it for everything. If there are two of these down, it can just negate a whole attack phase. Like, it's way more valuable than I think. Like, we put diffusive as a nice card for 2. This is the same, like pretty much the same, but it does it for all, and it can just stop a phase. Like,
I actually think I think Storm of Thorns is actually highly playable. I think it's playable
cool.
in non-Guardian decks.
I love it.
You don't get as much value because you don't get the floating memory, but it's very key. So it reduces damage by 1, and then if that damage has a source, then you can deal damage to someone else, right? So if someone hits you for 1 and you double Storm of Thorns, it's only going to reflect once. If they hit you for 2 and you double Storm of Thorns, it's going to hit them twice.
Yeah.
So like Storm of Thorns is really crazy, and it's actually probably one of the best anti-cleave cards. If you go to cleave and you Storm of Thorns, they take damage on every unit they hit.
Oh wow!
So like if you're a Wind Lorraine or a Fire Lorraine, you Flame Sweep, and I say Storm of Thorns, if you hit 4 allies and me, you take 5 damage.
Oh, that's awesome. Dude. Use it in that way, just like.
And if I double Storm of Thorns, you take 10.
Yeah, that's so good. I love this card. You got to put it in your deck. I love it.
Storm of Thorns is a good card. It's a very, very good card. It's probably lower on the side of highly playable, but it's like right there where I think this card is actually fantastic.
Agreed. Stillwater Patrol. Seen a few decks. I like that here. +1 against Invisible. Does it? Maybe rare usage. I don't think you're going to be versing that many. Like, I'm thinking of Dream Fairy. I'm thinking of if there's a circumstance people use those
Black Market
where they go down a level and invis, or they go invisible.
Oh,
like,
Innervate Agility.
Innervate Agility.
Really used against like things like Innervate Agility.
It's more for allies, right?
I think it's more for allies in most cases.
Maybe rare usage. Do you think it comes up in the niche key? Do you think you need to have?
No, I think it's definitely a rare usage thing. It's like, good to have an allies deck. It's important to have extra forms of removal. At the end of the day, it's just a 4-cost 2/3, right?
Correct. It's just too like if I'm probably more chance of using my Refractor to kill something that's invisible. That's a 2-cost than I am than a Stillwater Patrol.
Yeah, and then it also does 1 extra to stealth units. So like it's not bad.
It's not bad. Card. We might as well bring it. We've talked about Fractorize a lot. Oh, unplayed. Highly playable, surely. Fractorize, everybody has it. Fractorize encounters so many things. It's the ultimate counter card. You've got, when I first wept a tear when someone was trying to explain to me how my bullet, when you fractorize my gun, goes to the nether, and I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, yep, you can never play it again, and I just wept a tear of defeat.
Depends which one.
But I think it's just a wonderful card. Like, so you can do it yourself, straight into the floating memory. It's a 2-cost. Say no more, surely. We've got next, what else have we mentioned here that's in this group of cards? Freezing Hail. I don't know. I like the concept of Freezing Hail. I like that you can attack. You're like, oh no, if you've got an assassin that attacks and I stop it. I just feel like every time I play with the card, I never really get to use it like I want it, and I never come across somebody who's like attacking, and I'm like, I've got a cool Freezing Hail, and then I'm playing someone that a slime, or I'm playing Mill, and I'm just not seeing the value. But it's a 2-cost, and it can stops them from waking up. That's very strong. I would say Nish McKee, but
it's good against Tristan. It's good against Nico.
I'll put high playable, but I don't know. I just feel like I play other cards over it. Maybe that's why I'm losing so much.
I actually agree with you. I think it's one step down, and I think this is also the reason why it's been taken off of Category 1 on the banned and restricted list.
Yeah.
The card is good, but it's not as impactful as it used to be. This used to be like one of the strongest things because Lorraine was so popular. Having all these like attack focus, like Merlin's really popular, but now it's like even with Tristan's popularity, Slime has got a pretty good meta reach in there, and Freezing Hail is just like a pretty good card, but not an OP card anymore.
Yep. Let's go to the Frostborn Paladin. This surely comes in the highly playable. I think
best
it's a
ally
card.
Might be the best ally in the game.
Whew. The best ally in the game. You heard it here from once, Steve.
It might.
Best ally.
It might be.
It buffs to a 3/4, and it gives you a draw card. Like, what more do you want?
It's 3-cost 2/3 with intercept.
And is that
And
correct?
on
Yeah.
enter, you can banish a floating memory, draw a card, and gain a buff counter. So on top of cycling the card for a floating memory, you also gain a buff counter to make it a 3/4, which means it trades favorably into like almost every ally, like the majority of allies in the game. It's very close to being the best ally in the game. I think Ghost of Pendragon is better, but that's an advanced element card, and this is not. So Frostborn Paladin is very close to being the best ally in the game for me.
Guys of Pendragon, man, what a card!
It's like Frostborn Paladin, Dream Fairy, and
Kohazi Outlook.
Yeah, and Denman, you can't Kohazi, pretty much. Yeah, those three are like probably the best 3 allies out there.
Yeah, for sure. Let's go to Frostbind. I think is another highly playable card. I think everybody same thing. That ability to 2-cost. People are always thinking about when they're playing against a water player, like. If I'm going to play or play down, I've got to have cards for Frostbind. And that just mental game, and just I think that builds on that idea of what it means to be a Frost player. I think that there's also a whole lot of usage, not only paying 2 extra, I've seen it played against people with the balancing cards, when like Gildas and those allies, they're going for that balance and you pay that, they have to make the decision, do I want to pay the 2? I lose my balancing. I think it's a wonderful card.
Yeah, Frostbind for me is like almost niche but key, but I think it's still well within the highly playable. The thing is, Cerulean is just like so good in response. Frostbind allows you to banish the card. Cerulean allows you to cycle your Cerulean, which is really important in water. Like maintaining influence is really important. So Frostbind targets, like nowadays, you really have to gain value out of what you're banishing and what you're stopping.
So you're saying that it's just like power creep here? We're saying that Cerulean's now just a better version?
It's not quite better because Frostbind has banishment, right? So like if you play a Reclaim and I Frostbind your Reclaim, it's huge. If you play a Reclaim and I Cerulean your Reclaim, I'm actually just trolling. And like I just wasted a Cerulean Decree for some reason.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's the reason for me why I like between those two. I think Frostbind is still highly playable. I think both of them are fantastic cards.
I think Cerulean Decree
it's interesting because we look
beautiful.
at this list compared to last time, and like looking at our last time list, like we had most cards under niche but key, and now we have so many cards under highly playable because we took a list of cards that are just like fantastic cards in water.
But do you think that like that's the difference between, like, this is what we're talking about already? We've got 2 comparisons. We're going to do we've got fire. The way fire plays is very, like, it is. I don't know, like it sits in a specific lane. Like fire sits in there, works well with this, it works well with this. Well, water, really, maybe it's more, there's so many good cards that kind of fit, but they don't really sit in a lane, and so we don't really have that niche but key because they're kind of all played in a sense, but they still don't guide. You know what I mean? Like we've got a lot of casting counter, but it doesn't really direct us where we're going yet. You know what I mean? We're not sending. I would explain. Like, Nico's like that.
You can read the card, and it makes a lot more sense whether the card is good or bad.
Yeah.
In water, it's like kind of a lot harder to tell because water's playstyle, like there's such a large punishment for making mistakes in water versus fire. Like if you make a mistake in fire, the mistake you're making is because you still deal damage, right? In fire, if you screw up, you still probably dealt damage to their face, and it's like it's all right.
Yep. When
you mess up in water and you make a big misplay, you go down a card, you lose some sort of interaction, and you probably took damage.
Yeah.
So it's like it's a lot more difficult to figure out what cards are really good, which is why I think this water video is probably going to be more impactful than the wind or the fire one.
I hope so. I mean, more views, right? More people get involved. But I like that idea too, and we talk about like, we talk about the deck players. Well, we've talked a lot about Nico, and that's a lot of seeing it. We talk about water allies and water Anna, but I feel like when we talk about fire, there was specific, like, your Luxem Xander, you've got your Merlin build, you've got the 2 different types of Merlin build, one with the horse, the deer, and one with the prismatic that flips, right? Like there's specific things you're kind of building towards, but water is kind of like, it's a counterplay of all these spells that I'm going to be like, countering your play instead of building my play. And I'm kind of whittle you down to find an opening. Well, Nico has kind of probably the one where you're like, all right, my goal is to get to Nico and hit you hard and mill and get there. Does the others kind of fit that place? Water Anna, it's like building allies, but the ability to just play allies and just counter you and play around you and slowly whittle you down. And then that's what gives that variation of cards, maybe.
For sure.
We're
narrowing it down to the cards that I wanted to add to the list.
Now, Dahlia, I didn't pick Dahlia, right? Because again, I'm playing like cards I've never seen played. I fucking loved this card when I played, because I started as a Fire Dana, went to Water Dana. I think this card was huge because you can quickly, you get rained X with X amount of water cards in your graveyard. You can burn so many cards, and she quickly becomes for a 3-cost and 1/3. On attack, I'm dropping 2 cards in the graveyard. I'm milling, so I'm already getting that bonus pretty quickly. And it's so many things in what a mill. You can easily get this to a 5 or 6/3 very fast. Like, I think this is a very strong water ally for Diana players, and I liked it when I first played. But people aren't playing Diana Water that much. That would be my thing.
One of the funny things about this card is you don't actually have to be a ranger to use it. All you need to do is run backstep. Right? If you just run backstep, you can just make her distant, and then she swings for like 15.
Yeah. I think it's. Does it make play? I just think it's an underplayed card. Maybe that if we could see maybe more cards that complement, I just think it's a great card. I think
Water Self Mill Ranger is actually like very good right now.
Yeah.
A lot of people haven't really explored it, but it is very good. Playing cards like Cell Sharpshooter, Imperial Scout, Dahlia, having your Fractal of Rain and other things. The thing is, this card is a rare usage card because it's very specific to that deck archetype, and you have to build cards around it, and it's not necessarily like easy to use. The other thing is that like when you look at Ranger Automaton, you have to remember the card Reprogram exists, and it's the bane of your existence as a human being.
Yeah, I was playing this pre gold. But
yeah, this card very cool, very good, has a lot of potential. Not a card you should discount, in my opinion. I think Dahlia is actually very fun to play.
I love the design of that card. Quasi Trapper is what I'm seeing right now. I think everybody talks about it. 3-cost, gives a prep counter. Yeah, -3 to remove the prep counter. Wonderful. The
thing that makes it really strong is that you can use it on a unit, which means you can target your opponent's champion too. So it's really, really good into Sadie, where she needs to get the kill. You can actually activate the Quasi Trapper in response. It's really good against Lorraine level 2, where people want the on-kill. It's also fantastic against Nico, because you can -3 Nico on attack for the Ravishing Finale, and then you can use a Deflecting Edge or a Resolute Stand. So a lot of combinations where this is really good. It's also one of the only cards that allows you to gain prep counters in water that is objectively very good. So if you're playing Water Tristan and you want to slice and dice someone, Quasi Trapper is probably your best bet at getting prep counters outside of Sadie. Because you can do things like set the traps, but those cards are so niche and specific.
And it's not class bonus either, right? It gives you just gives you a prep, which is crazy, right? It's an assassin without that class bonus.
Yeah, and you don't even need to be an assassin to use preparation counters. You can use them independent of what your class is.
For the rest of these cards, I've really not seen them played. Tidal Sweep, I mean, it's 6-cost. It's a cleave and a floating. I tried using it
if you're a warrior. It's only
only if you're a warrior. I don't know. I played it versing allies. Do I sideboard it? I like playing that aggressive. Does it come in rare usage? I mean, it's the only way I can cleave if I was playing a warrior deck. Am I seeing that many allies? Is it when I was playing Tristan, it could just smack across the board. It's a nice card, but it's 6-cost, man. It's so big. I'd be playing it unplayable or very rare usage.
I think the card's unplayable. I think even one less cost, it would actually be good for the combinations that we talked about.
6, so man. What?
I think if it was a 5-cost card, you could use it with Lorraine level 2 and stuff like that, because it would cost a more reasonable amount of cards.
What's Flame Sweep or Wind Sweep? What are the Flame and Flame Sweep and Wind Sweep?
Flame Sweep is a 4-cost. Flame Sweep is a 4-cost if you're level 2 and you're a warrior or guardian. Or maybe just warrior, you get +1.
What? What happened, man? And there's Hurricane Sweep.
It's just a Wind Sweep. Yeah, so class bonus level 2 is +1 attack, so it becomes a 2-attack sweep. And it's a 4-cost. Hurricane Sweep is 5-cost, but it's efficiency. So if you're level 2, it's 3-cost.
So what happened here, guys? Why is
Floating Memories?
It's got floating memory. It's got class bonus floating memory. It's huge, man. It's got floating memories. We'll give it 2 additional cost points.
Is so close to being really good. It's just too expensive, and the class bonus floating specifically makes it hard to use, I think.
All right. Hypothermia, I think, is probably... I'm going to get rare usage. I think it... More ally decks. I mean, a 2-cost... -4 can remove, but it is slow play, not fast.
And they have to be rested. They have to be rested.
Oh yeah, until they would attack and you play.
Hypothermia is just a nice ally removal spell. I think it's really good, but it's like very specific to deck types. So rare usage makes the most sense to me.
Agree.
Like you're able to kill things like an Ace and Protector, right? You can hypothermia an Ace and Protector.
But like how many? Like I said, I think the change. Yeah, I think you play it in sometimes, or maybe for the counter of that, if you're seeing a lot of, allies in your region or in your store champs. Primordial Ritual. I really don't know much about this card. I've seen it play a few times. Additional cost to activate this card: sacrifice an ally. Target player puts the top 2 cards from the deck into the graveyard. So 2 cost. It's kind of like it's fast played, so it's kind of like reclaim. Like you're gonna kill. Sadie's gonna reclaim. I'm like, no, thank you. I'll sacrifice it. Mill 2 and put a floating in. I mean, I don't really get to draw, but I do get the mill and a floating. Niche Baki maybe goes in highly playable because I get the idea that if I'm playing it at 2 costs, it's fast, it can stop a Sadie, and it can also give me a floating or keep me milling through. That's what my train of thought there.
I think it's really interesting hearing your thoughts on the cards, especially the ones that you don't know very well, because you're starting to understand why I rate cards a certain way and like what they're there for, right? You're like, okay, well, in these situations, this card's great. In these situations, like I could do this as a response to blank. Primordial Ritual, while the card reads to be fantastic, one of the biggest requirements is you have to have allies in your decks. So you have to actually be playing a fair amount of allies. For that reason, I think it's actually more under rare usage than Niche Baki. You don't need to sacrifice to mill. We have better cards for milling. We have Icebound Slam. We have Fractal of Rain. We have other ways to put cards in our graveyard. Primordial Ritual, while it is a great card to kind of mill and like push things faster into the graveyard, its best targets are things like Stalwart Shieldmates, etc. It's not absolutely necessary in a lot of the mill-focused decks. There are usually other cards in each specific class typing for the deck that you would use instead.
Yep. Cool. Right, what have we got left here? Well, Conjure Downpour, I have seen played not much, but it's a 3 cost until the turn. Whenever a unit attacks, they get -2. It is class bonus, and if memory +4, I think you get draw a card in memory. Is that played that much or part of it? I mean, who's playing clerics? Until minus.
Oh, wow. It's like it's cool, but without the draw card into your memory to cycle the card, it's like kind of very weak in a sense. It is a decent fog against allies, but it's only against allies, right? -2 to each unit that attacks is like all right, but like at the same time, I'd rather just hold a Song of Frost in my hand, or like a Storm of Thorns.
Yeah, I do love Storm of Thorns.
Just because I feel like they have more like flexible applications.
Yeah, I think maybe whatever the reduced cost, I mean, they cost 2 instead of 3.
If it costs 2 instead of 3, it could be all right. Actually, if it costs 2 instead of 3, I think it'd be pretty good. And the reason is because it does stop -2. Like it stops 2 attacks.
It's all units, right? It says whenever a unit attacks, it'd be multiple units too, right? Yeah. Vapor Jet Shield.
The thing is, it specifically says whenever a unit attacks. So what that means is if someone attacks you and you conjure Downpour in response, you can actually retaliate and probably kill them depending on what it is. So like there's a little bit more flexibility in the combinations you can use it with. It's a little bit too expensive and it doesn't draw into memory, and you don't get the class bonus memory aspect of it. If it just said memory 4+, I think this card would be fantastic.
There you go. Maybe some changes for Grand Archive.
Or if the class bonus was like cost 2 less or something, or cost 1 less, it would be way better.
Yeah, agreed. Vapor Jet Shield. Now, I was like, it's a 2 cost material. I mean, it gives a unit link. It prevents 1 damage to the unit. I don't like it. I mean, Necrotic was like, yeah, you should think about putting it in. 2 cost in a 4 cost meta. What am I trying to keep alive when rounds are over so quickly? Am I going to pay 2 material to bring this in when I could bring so much out in a turn and a draw card materialize? I think it's unplayable. I just think, I'm going to turn around on my backup charger. I might have my Grand Crusader ring. I might be trying to bring out a weapon to use. Like, I just don't think it's what am I going to put it on? Like, maybe I could put on, if I had really strong Frostwind Paladin comes up, I've got a buff on it. I can then Vapor Shield it, like for a 2 cost because I've had that good open. It hasn't died. and it's going to get more value. And then now I've got this huge prevent every time on it. Does it then come maybe into rare usage? But for 2 cost, it's not coming out till round 2.
What's your final answer?
We do like Frostwind Paladin. I'll put Niche Key. Okay, I get where I can sit with the Frostwind Paladin. That
So
you know
think
that
it's
idea.
key because of 1 card. One
Is there any other water card? One ally specifically? What other allies am I playing a water deck? I mean, I've had Gildas, I guess, to keep Gildas up and balancing, but I don't. Yeah,
Are you
maybe.
ready for me to blow your mind?
It's not highly playable. Yeah. Okay, go.
Vaporjet Shield does not say ally link; it says unit link, which means you can put it on your champion.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Demons. Yeah.
which suddenly makes the card way better, right?
Yeah, it makes sounds like way better. Yeah, blow my mind already.
You're like, wait,
Okay,
wait, I can
play.
stop every instance of 1 damage to my champion.
Yeah. Okay. That's
So this card is really good because it wins you the Fire Xander matchup on Water Tenoris and Nico, and it can win you the Fire matchup on Nico. It's very good against aggro. It's very good against allies.
So you sideboarding it? Like, are you putting it straight in your main? Like, are you saying
You can put this in your main if you want. This is one of those cards where you can technically put it onto your Quicksilver Grail, or you can just materialize it raw, and it's like kind of good because the only ways to get rid of it are to fracturize it or to destroy it. And the only card that destroys Vaporjet Shield in the game, I think, is Meltdown.
What about
Spurn to Ash can't break it. Oh, and Excalibur. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, and Excalibur.
Yeah, Meltdown and Excalibur.
What about that hammer?
It's a good thing, no one plays Luxem right now.
Yeah, exactly. True. That's it. Ben.
Does
remember
the
that was
Smashing Force break it?
Yeah, I was gonna say the Smashing Force break it. Fire Tenoris.
Nope. It says memory cost 0 or reserve cost 4 or less.
Okay, Vaporjet Shield.
And this is
could
a memory cost of 2, which means.
So
Spurn
you
to Ash
saying
can't
it's
target
highly
either.
playable here? Or are we saying it's niche
No,
but key? Like
niche but key.
yeah, come on. Okay. Yeah, I guess.
You really
yeah,
thought
on
this card was
champion.
unplayable for a second, and I get it.
I
If you think
did.
it's ally link, if you only think this card is ally link, it totally makes sense that this card's terrible.
That's a rookie.
Right?
Read the card. Read the card, guys. Read the card. Read the card. But even
Yeah,
then,
so
like 2
one of the
costs,
nice things
man.
is like Vaporjet Shield. Yeah, but a lot of the decks you'd be running this in a Guardian deck, right? So you're gonna be milling anyways at some point.
Yeah.
You're gonna have the floating, whether it's Storm of Thorns, Diffusive Block, or if you're milling and you have Refracting Missile, Chilling Touch, Fracturize, Lost in Thoughts. Like you have a lot of options and ways to get this out. Yeah, if they target it with a Zephyr, it still comes back, and you can just unit link it again. So pretty good card. Pretty good card. Unit link is this is the first card I think we have with unit link. That was like pretty cool.
How long? When did it get released?
MRC.
MRC. Cool.
This card is a $40 foil. It's a rare
Wow.
card.
Beautiful.
It's not even like an SR. It's a good card though.
Nia, the Mist-Veiled Scout. Does it now? I've noted the idea is the card specific. This is one of the read the card. So it's look at opponent's memory, then choose any card name. Which I was pretty much told that it doesn't have to be the card you can see. You just name a card, and it's going to cost 1
Grand
extra.
Crusader's Ring.
Yeah,
then
and it's
your
gonna
Grand
cost you-
Crusader's Ring costs 1.
Yeah, crazy, right? Like when I was like, that's kind of like when I first like, Grand Arc, you're really going to read the cards like Unilink. One of the things I think the biggest mistakes I keep making, but. I don't think it's played that much. It may become rare usage. I wouldn't say I just think people are playing it. Like 1 cost extra. Is that like it's not disruptive and other people are playing it? That maybe a certain decks. I don't think it's even being played that much. Maybe unplayable.
Yeah, I think you have to. The thing is that with Nia, I think she's a rare usage because she is good in ally decks. She's a 1/3, and if you have class bonus, she has stealth. A 1/3 with stealth is pretty hard to take off the board, so like I do see value in that. And you can use her on enter stop a lot of combos too, right? Like if you know that your opponent needs to resolve like 2 specific cards to win the game, you can just force it to be different. Like if they have 3 cards in hand and they're playing wind robots, you could just say, "Oh, Nia on enter manufacture cell," and now they can't play the manufacture cell that might be in their hand.
Yeah.
So she can be disruptive in a sense. I don't think she's as good as she used to be. As when like allies were more prevalent, her having stealth was really good think right now she's kind of just chilling. Also, keep in mind that the cost increase affects all players. So if you say Grand Crusader's Ring and you try to materialize your own, you're going to have to pay one cost as well.
So make sure you spend first.
Yeah, so you actually have to think about what you wanna target with that increased cost.
What a barrier. Cleric Reflection. I think that it prevents the damage all but one. Correct. That's nice. Floating memory for your class for mage as well, which I think is useful. I just don't see. I mean, I don't see many water mages or water clerics. I would say I think if you're, when I think of Fire Mill, and the barrier card is wonderful and it's really strong, but we know we can also fast response to the barrier. So a lot of people they fireball, fast response, I'll spark a light, I'll then fire, to remove the barrier. So I would say unplayable because nobody's really playing Watermelon. I mean, the barrier's nice, but it's pretty countable. What do you say to that? Some master.
Yeah, I think unplayable is pretty accurate. The only time I've ever played this is in my Fire Merlin deck when I needed a water floating for mages.
Wow.
But Chilling Touch is just a better version of the same card in that
concept.
The thing with Water Barrier is because of the way the stack interacts in this game, Water Barrier is not as good of a card. If I fireball you, and you say in response to your fireball, Water Barrier, I say cool. Water Barrier resolves. On the stack above my fireball, I'm going to Sparklight you. I've now done 3 unpreventable damage, which breaks your Water Barrier. So it says the next time damage would be dealt means it doesn't carry over. So it tries to prevent damage, can't prevent damage. You lose the Water Barrier. I deal 3 unpreventable damage to you, and then my fireball goes through afterwards. So for that reason, I mean, even Sparkle or Ignite the Soul is a good example, right? Prevent all but one. Well, Ignite the Soul does 1 damage anyways. So, there are things that make Water Barrier a little bit on the weaker side than we would want it to be.
Agreed. Desperate Dive. Now, not really seen this card played or used. A range of skill reactions, fast played. So this card costs 1 less to activate it from range. So it's a 2 cost. Prevent the X damage that would be able to target unit you control, where X is the amount of watermelon cards you graded. The unit becomes distance.
So
okay, well, if we're looking at
with this card, before we go on,
go.
It says you control this turn, because otherwise that means that you prevent it indefinitely. It was just a printing error. So Desperate Dive is prevent the next X damage that would be dealt to target unit you control this turn, where X is the number of water cards in your graveyard. Otherwise, it would just be every single time damage is dealt, which would be insanely broken and and it would be instantly banned.
Yeah, correct. I mean, you rated Cascading in this Water Diana deck. We're liking some of the cards here. I mean, does it rare usage? I think it sits nicely against Dahlia. I think it has a strength that prevent, and we're talking about a nice matchup of cards. If I can prevent Dahlia here, give her distance, that's a nice card.
It's also Dahlia in the art too.
Yeah. How beautiful. But I would put it in rare usage next to.
Yeah, I think rare usage is good. This card is pretty cool because it's a 3-cost fast prevent damage based on water and grave. It is countered by things like No Lantern, like I said before, but overall, you could see 1 or 2 of these in a deck just to kind of catch your opponent off guard, and I think it's pretty good.
A nice prevent. Because it's not, I think the beauty of those prevent cards is so valuable as well, in that a lot of the time preventing both mixed damage. When people talk about Covenant of Thorns, it directs all kinds of damages a lot stronger too, because you're having that mix. You don't know what kind of players you're going to come across, and having that mixed prevent is always better. Now, this is Naya, the Diviner of Fortunes. I really look forward with my eyes to try and read it on my big screen here. A Mage Human, so it's a mage class bonus. On enter, reveal the top 3 cards from your deck, banish one of those cards, and get the rest in your graveyard. If the banish card is a spell card, you may activate it as long as you control Naya.
So you can activate it out of your banishment, essentially. As if the card were in your hand. It's like how slimes can play with Guy's Blessing.
Yeah.
So what do you think about Naya? She's a 3-cost 2/2 class bonus for this on enter, and she's a mage human. Unique ally.
I mean, it comes down to the beauty here is that you have to play a mage. So what am I playing? I'm either playing Watermelon here and Water Rye. Am I going to see benefit of the card? I think it comes, rare. It's so random too. I'm revealing the top 3 cards. How many of the mage spells? How many spells am I going to run in water that I can play? So, Fracturize or maybe rare usage. Rare usage. I think that you're not playing that many watermelons, or you're not playing that many water decks. You're not seeing that kind of mage. But I also, if you were going to play that, you could have a free Fracturize in there. You could have a free. Looking at all the spells we have, Song of Frost. If you're playing a Chilling Touch, whatever it may that you have there, comes out. I can see my deck. I'm milling. I'm also getting the ability to play a free spell cost card.
So I think Naya is actually unplayable because when it comes to
That's close.
When it comes to Rye, you're probably playing Arcane cards.
Yeah.
And you don't really want to fill with too much water and too much Norm outside of like Fogs or just ways to push it to level 3. Mind Freeze being like a level-based card is probably one of your bigger cards. The thing is, Naya's a 3-cost 2/2. It's very easy to kill, and you can only play the banished card if you control Naya. Which means when she dies and she's off the field, it no longer applies. Now with that, and then on top of that having, like, you put 2 cards in the graveyard, could be great. You could be able to, put more floating memory in there. After that, it's like, And I think a stat line is just like not good enough overall for Naya. Naya's really cool. I know Glenn really liked Naya when she came out in the concept of her. I just don't see her being like super impactful in a lot of decks or being impactful enough in an archetype that is like competitive right now.
The Intrepid Highwayman intercept 1/2. As long as the Highwayman is retaliating, it gets +3.
Mm.
Floating Memory Assassin. I mean, that seems pretty good. A 4/2. I mean, retaliating is just going to sit there. It also has floating memory. Doesn't seem like a bad card. Like,
yeah,
I guess I can attack for 1. I think it's
assassin.
I think if I was playing for exactly right. It's a 3 cost, has floating memory. I mean, does it get highly played? I think it's highly played across the decks, but specifically maybe niche Piquet. I think if you're looking at an Assassin Water Ally deck, I'd be considering this. Like, it's a nice sit on the board. It's kind of like your Retaliant lurking, but it's a 4/2, which is a huge amount of damage, and you can intercept.
She's just really strong because like 4 attack on an intercept retaliate is like a lot. Like 4 power is hard to deal with in the game.
Yeah.
The only downside to her really is that she's 2 life. But the benefit of that is like assassin class bonus floating. So if she dies anyways, you're like kind of chilling.
Yeah, not too bad. 2 more cards. The Tide Diviner. Jesus, where are you finding these cards? Mage Human on enter. Look at the top eye plus level of your deck. Put one of those cards into your hand and the rest into your graveyard.
And now, do you think this card is good? It's a 4-cost 1/1. On enter. Top 1+ level cards in your deck. Put one of them into your hand and the rest go into grave. So you can mill cards and gain a card. So she self-cycles, which is good. But she's a 4-cost 1/1.
I mean, we get the same logic. Like, why would I... I'm playing Rye as a mage. Or do it's not a class bonus. Anybody can do it. Okay. 4 cost. I mean, it's like a slam, but I mean, it also does no damage. But it does give me a nice look at it for 4 cost.
It's like
I don't think it's good to draw a 4
hand. Almost.
Yeah, but I ain't getting to put 1 card in. I'm paying 4 cost to get 1 card, and I do get to mill 4. But I think there's like power crap. Like, surely there's another better card that's going to give me a better draw than this. I'm not feeling it. I'm going rare usage or even unplayable.
I agree with you. I think she's unplayable. The reason I wanted to bring up Naya and Tide Diviner is because Naya is talked about a lot as the replacement for Tide Diviner, and I don't think that she is. And in the past, people love Tide Diviner, right? Tide Diviner ended up being the top 32
really
for Houston, for Ontario, and for Auckland.
Was she played? Like,
she was played like a fair amount.
Wow.
People played her in like the Water Merlin-y kind of focus decks if they could. The thing is, she wasn't like crazy good. She was just a really well loved card. I don't think Tide Diviner is good enough to play. Specifically because we just have better mill cards now. Like, why would I play a Tide Diviner when I just play an Imbued Fractal Ren?
I mean, we're talking, like, we're talking about Aqua before and rare usage.
You can kind of fit in either, right?
Yeah, but we were talking about Aqua before. Like, that's a 2-cost draw card. Like, just 4 costs. Even with, I know you get the mill,
Well,
but you're 4 costs
it's
here.
the mix
like,
of like it's like
glimpsing,
draw,
yeah.
and then mill, almost. You know,
maybe 3. Make it a 3 cost. And finally, the revitalizing cleanse. Reveal all your cards in your memory. Recover X, where X is the amount of water element cards revealed in the way. Draw a card.
5 cost fast.
I mean, it's like favorable wins. Favorable wins is that the one where you? No, that's what's the one where you flip over and look at all your win cards and prevent that damage.
Veiling Breeze.
Veiling Breeze, sorry. And what's the cost of veiling? 1, 2. 1 cost. 1 cost. I reveal all my win to prevent all that damage. Here, it costs me 5, but I get to heal and draw a card. What am I gonna heal 5 for a 5 heal cost? Like, what? Am I just gonna run like so? If I want to heal, I'm gonna run Serene Water to recover. Is it gonna really game change me for a 5 cost fast play instead of another water card? Unplayable.
Really, you think this card's unplayable?
Unplayable.
Whoa, I wasn't expecting
Unplayable.
that.
Like, I think. What am I?
put this card
5
under
cards?
rare
I'm gonna put
usage
5 cards. I'm gonna go. I've got all 5 to heal 5. Like, where am I at in my state of gameplay right now?
When you play water, you're holding 8 cards and you say pass.
Yeah. Yeah,
because like your board state's good.
To do something else, to heal, you're gonna heal 5 is gonna be your. That's what you're gonna counter. Hey man, I'm gonna come in. The person's gonna Tristan me with Shadow Strike. I'm gonna recover 5. What?
I mean, if they're gonna Shadow Strike you through that, they have to. First of all, they have to outlook you because you might just Sawyer Frost them or Frost.
Yeah, correct. I know.
But the big thing is, so in Revitalizing Cleanse, like this is a fantastic card in Luxem Water's Ender for a long time because you can reveal.
You get the reveal.
Cards,
okay, yeah, right.
And you reveal Revitalizing.
Yeah, the reveal is good.
Draws, I think, is good though. Like the draw
nice.
itself is good.
Mm.
But this is also playable in Nico. It's actually it was popular in Nico at a point, like early on, and I think it's slowly regaining traction to run like 2 of these. Because if you get this and you resolve it for like 5, suddenly your Nico goes from 31 health to 36. And like that's a lot of damage to put. Like it's hard to kill that much.
Yeah, it's a
people kind of underestimate how much Recover is valued. Recover 2 is essentially a 4 influence. Recover 3 is almost a 5 influence value. Right, because if you have to put down like 3 cards for a Wind Rider Vanguard, you put 3 down and you use a card to hit me for 2.
Yep.
Right, or you play a Frostborn Paladin, banish, and then attack me, or you Ace and Protector and attack me for 3. Like recovering 2, 3, 4 is like a lot more valuable than people give it credit for because they don't look at recover and then kind of value it according to how much
cards.
They
don't do it to HP. I'm pushing my HP down versus compared to like card quantity. How much does it cost to deal that much damage of card?
And especially because when you look at like life in Grand Archive, like life is a resource and it's really important. So when you remove damage counters and regain like more potential life, you stalling the game out could be really important for you. But it could also just be pushing you to the point where like you're able to find lethal against your opponent. Or they might just run out of gas in some decks, right? Like when you look at like fire aggro decks, they push their influence down so fast and so hard to try to kill you right away. They might not be able to have enough steam for it.
I was saying like, we're coming to the end here of this tier list. It's been awesome and fun with you. Like when I've been playing Water more recently with the Nico, I just seem to find like, of course I'm playing against Tristan, we're just seeing more often, but that Tristan, I feel like the more I'm trying to stall at that game, once he's built up, his allies, like her allies, I'm like, what do I do here? Because they're just so strong. Once I'm prolonging and they're just building prep counters in that specific matchup. I don't know if it, like you said, I think that meta and then be watching the strength of that card come through, I think is stopping that urgency to level up. But it's so I've got to try them, kill them quickly, but also they, have the ability to do a lot of damage early and they're so flexible. And I think that's why it's such a strong deck. Where I see with like Nick, I'm trying like, I can slow, like that revitalizing, I'm like, I like that idea to keep it going, but I feel like I don't have the time to get there because I'm probably going to verse a Tristan Rally and they're going to have a lot of damage in the way, and I want to get to that kill and get to putting out my my Ravishing Finale that I'm just not going to see a card like this. I want to prioritize something else to get that rush momentum out for my
Revitalizing is like a second Serene Spirit in that regard, right?
Yeah.
So if you recover 5, The thing is, Tristan's fastest kill on like going up to level 3 with a Mastermind Scheme and a Shadow Strike is like turn 4 realistically, because they need the influence to do it and they need the prep counters. If they go to 4 prep counters, level to 2, Dungeon Guide to 3, they go to 5, Mastermind Scheme to 10. Shadow Strike with 2 shadows and a Shadow's Claw is 20 damage, including the Dungeon Guide. You're 31 health, right? It's not as fast as you want to make it out to be, because you have a lot more health than you kind of think you do.
Yeah.
And you also have forced them to play it slower, just because like things like Song of Frost exist, things like Frostmind exist. You have ways to deal with attack cards as well as with Korazi Outlook. Or even like their reclaims, right? Like a lot of people have to be more respectful of that.
Or do we think it like moves up then to niche but key?
No, I think it's still under rare usage. There's like very specific decks and specific times where it's really good. I don't think it's absolutely key. It's just a fun option, and it works.
As a draw card, I do like that.
Draw a card is good. Self-cycle cards in water are very important. Every time you go down in influence, you need to have a good reason and good value to do it. If not, playing cards that let you cycle a card is fantastic. Do an effect and draw a card. Cool.
Yeah, great.
You know, that's why it's really increased so good right now.
I'm very keen to see the new cards that are coming out that are hopefully going to keep broadening this mill kind of meta. And like you said, the fractal stuff should be really fun. I believe, is there a mage coming out too?
Yeah, water mage.
Terra, water mage.
And then wind warrior Exia.
So that might bring some of these cards here that we're talking about, like water barrier might come in here. We might see the Tide Diviner or Nyla might come making back. We don't know. I'm excited. But yeah, that's been our tier list for water. I've been super fun to deck build with you once again. I love, learning from the master. Hopefully, like I'm telling you, even just being here and chatting to you, like has every time I go back and play with my friends now, I feel like I'm just a little bit better. Like I'm trying new things. Okay, look, I think, and hopefully people watching this in my shoes, or also in ones that want to argue with ones, and say you're wrong ones. I think this is also a great thing, because this is what we need as a community to come and talk about this to help all levels of players. Have whole times of discussion. That's what we're passionate about. Once is pretty much bleeds Grand Archive if you cut him open. So it's so great to have you here and have this fun content.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It's always great to kind of put out more like educational content. And I really appreciate that people value my opinion and that you value my opinion. So that does mean a lot to me. So thank you so much.
I appreciate it. Well, that's it, guys and girls and anyone else that you identify, and we include you. Any Grand Archive person, we love you and we love you being here. And I hope to see you for another VOD. I hope to see you in IRL, any events. I am not going to Singapore because I'll be in Greece with my family. I was unfortunate at the same time, but Once is going to be there. So check him out. Are you doing anything with your hair? Are you changing the color up? Will they see, be able to identify you in the crowd?
Chopping it off.
Oh my God.
It's getting long, brother. It needs to. Singapore is hot, bro. There's no way I'm keeping this much hair going to Singapore. I'm good.
I wouldn't have been, if you were walking around where you are, I wouldn't have been identified without the hair.
I mean, it'll just be, the normal dark black hair.
You'll be cosplaying though, right? You'll be cosplaying, yeah? We'll be identified.
I don't know about that. Cosplaying in Singapore sounds like a lot of work. Traveling with cosplay, not the fun one.
I'd love to see you on the plane. How long's the plane trip? Like in a cosplay outfit? Be like, hey, what's up?
My total trip is 21 hours. I think,
no, that's not too bad.
But I think it's only 16 or 17 hours.
That's not bad.
From San Francisco to Singapore.
Cool. Otherwise, for me, I'm keen for New Zealand. It's coming to Ascent. I believe there is a Europe regionals that's coming up online, which will be actually a good time for me. It's on a weekend, okay? Because I can't do the American ones because they're on Mondays and I have work, okay? Wish I could do that, but look, wonderful. Please jump in the comments, give a like. Please check out Conor Course's Creative Shock. Once is from what's your? I know it's Yeti,
Magic
but
Library TCG is
Magic Library TCG.
Channel.
Yeah, please check him out.
We do a lot of streaming on Serene Balance Productions, so if you have
Serene Balance,
yeah, the Yeti weeklies as well as the online regionals, we do there as well.
Which they just had, and I had a wonderful time. They had a whole bunch of people. They also do, with Yeti, I know we've got Elusive that works creative. That's in Australia. That's on Tuesday nights, which is online, webcam. And, of course, you've got, what's your time frame for your webcam events? Your weekly events, are they on what night? Do you know?
Thursdays at 7 p.m. Central.
Okay, there you go. So you can check out those. There's tons of people there playing, and
They're
we
also
enjoy it.
free. All of our events are free for locals for the weeklies.
Wow.
The only thing you have to pay for is shipping if you win anything.
Cool. That's awesome. And I know too, like a big part. So just ending it the same way, but I found for me, I live in rural in my country, so it's very hard to play with people. So I found the elusive is good, but also just going into the Discord, I also just like people. The Grand Arc Discord is a huge place. You should join that. You can @TTS people and say use Tabletop Simulator and play with people and try new cards, or you can and webcam people. So that's a great place. And I'll just be sitting like, anyone want a game, and you just meet up and play. So I think that's another great space that you can build on that.
Yeah, don't forget to play games, guys. That's
play
what
games.
it's all about, right?
Yeah, and let's get excited.
But if you never play games, it's not the same.
Yeah, who will know? Exactly. We're just talking here, but we're gonna play them. So, look, I've had a wonderful time. We'll see you for the next video. That was once. I'm Jack, Mr. Ree, and we've loved being here with you. So, peace out, and see you again.
Peace, guys.